It is November 30th, 1941, and it's brought with it some good news and some bad news. Being that it has turned 24, Stalin has finally decided to release some of the reserves. So this brings with it an influx of 500,000 men. I don't really know how this is distributed. I do make some decisions that may or may not be beneficial with how these all get brought to the map or to the reserves. But before reaching that, looking across the front lines, things are getting interesting. In the Rostov area, his men have begun falling back. I'm pretty sure this is to reach that river line to try to prevent me from cutting off his ability to resupply his units that are right now assaulting Krasnodar. But in his standard aggressive fashion, he has done a series of minor attacks further north along the lines. I did kind of see this coming, mainly when I moved up last turn, just misunderstanding the strength of his units. I had quite a few infantry divisions sitting here with CVs with the fog of war sitting around 7. I am relatively surprised that this is all he attempted in this area, but maybe it's because as we move further north, from this point all the way up to Tambov, all of his units have retreated towards Voronezh. This has created an opportunity for me. For my limited reconnaissance, everything from Tambov all the way to Rezhev has limited supplies. I think to mitigate this, he does a series of attacks, very similar like he did in the south. Very selected targets. He does push a hole through right by Ryazan, and then he does hit a rifle division of Zhukov's in the 13th, north of Tula. Other than that, though, the rest of the front line remains relatively quiet. The only other thing he does is a small attack east of Leningrad. Honestly, not sure the purpose of it. I guess it just was an opportunistic area where he could find a way to take another 3,000 Russians. But he doesn't move into the space at all. And in fact, the majority of these battles, he just leaves the ground open. The only space he does step into is north of Tula, which does present an opportunity for me when we reach that. But all in all, as I begin my turn on the 30th of November, what I'm facing looks fairly manageable. I'm relatively happy. I'm very anxious to see where these 500,000 men do go. And that is until I look southward. Ignoring the harsh winter of 1941, ignoring the single rail line that can't possibly be reconstructed to the German gauge at this point in time, his units have continued southward. They have crossed the river of Kuban. They have Krasnodar completely cut off, almost surrounded. This has forced me to make a very difficult decision in this area. For the city of Krasnodar, when it falls, we'll put a bunch of German infantry divisions, and yes, they're pretty much all German infantry divisions in this area, being in a position to completely cut off my coastal army. So that would be another 100 and some thousand men gone if I allow that to fall. So I'm going to have to retreat out of this peninsula. I continue to question how he supplies all this, but I mean, you can see the red little arrows on his units and mine. The answer is he's pretty much not. So at some point in time, this is going to come to a halt. I still think the only real solution down here is by me taking Rostov, preferably by January 1st. Only then will he have to do something, because I just can't see him being able to keep this going with just ports and the little ferry crossing at Kerch. But I do have to continue to make things as difficult as possible whenever it is his turn. So I'm moving forward. The entire western and southwestern front is going to fill in this void that he has gifted me. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to take Voronezh with my winter offensive, but I'm going to try. And at this point in time, I'm pretty much grounding my entire Air Force, hence why there isn't even anything to show on that side of things. So I'll just slowly go about modernizing it as we get through these months. But it's mostly going to be what I'm able to accomplish as things get rather difficult for him. And that's going to start by trying to find a way to keep him from like digging into Fort Level 2. The southern front's going to do the exact same thing, moving within 10 hexes of Rostov. I was looking at a front line that I'm unsure of with how much strength it has, but if it's like everything else, it's going to be more than I can handle right now. But we're going to see as time continues to progress how much units I do end up moving down here. Currently, though, the only point of the front lines that I have the numerical advantage is here in the center, stretching from Rezhev all the way to Tambov. And here in the center, north of Tula, once again, the Dustreich SS Motorized Division has moved up and presented itself to me, so I take the bait and I attack. So the assault across the open ground, 80,000 men moving in, is exactly what I'm going to take every time. I got to find a way to get him a little bit of rest, but still, I mean, I have 700 tanks here, which is more than I've ever been able to bring to a single battle, albeit in 1941 they're not the greatest of quality, so I do end up losing over 100, but I do get them to retreat. Casualties are a little high, but it's manageable. The center front continues to remain active as the 30th Army crosses into the 129th Infantry Division. With 50,000 men going against 10, with 700 guns going against 200, I'm feeling pretty decent with these odds. And then I do get the retreat that I wanted, which I then moved a couple rifle divisions up into the hex that weren't involved in that combat, and then I was faced with a choice. Now, part of me wanted to continue the attack on the 129th. I would have had a little bit, almost 4-1. Instead, I decided to link up with a section of the 1st Shock Army and hit the 35th Infantry Division. I fell for what looked like almost 4-1 odds. They're both in the center front, so it's a 10% negative, which I guess I didn't really think meant as much as it does. So as the combat happens, I'm immediately feeling that I'm doing pretty good. 105,000 men going against 11,000. Bobkin gets decent odds, decent die rolls most of the time for me. I've been using him quite a lot the last couple weeks, but not this time. I don't know whether or not the 5th Corps or it's the Air Force or it's that 10% penalty, but either way they hold. I do get 5 airplanes out of it to op losses, so I'll take that. But moving eastward, the 43rd Army is going to become active. For the last couple weeks, it's just been kind of a punching bag as it's tried to fend a supply depot. But for now, it finds the 161st Infantry, which is definitely undersupplied, as is almost everything in this area. So this is going to remain a key point of my next couple weeks. But the combat itself is relatively straightforward. 42,000 men, 167 tanks, coming from Malyhin. Gets pretty decent. 14 tanks is fine with me. And the 6th Army is also going to get involved. I don't think I've used him yet, so this is his first action as far as I'm aware. And it's going to go against the 28th Infantry Division. The idea here is to apply pressure to the northern edge of his line as it starts turning southward. This might give me the ability to retake Voronezh by the end of winter. And being that the 6th Army is as rested as it is at this point in time, we're going to continue to attack, moving on to the 263rd Infantry Division, also heavily undersupplied. The losses aren't as what I would want, but it does continue him retreating. Further southward, though, another army getting involved for the very first time is the 26th, moving into an offensive position. Unfortunately, I didn't know that the 24th Infantry Division was going to be in reserves, so we get kind of ambushed here. And this is definitely the most active turn that I've been able to kind of churn out at this point in the war, which I'll admit is just either sad or just a sign that I'm starting to wrap my mind around how this works. But either way, there's been a lot of changes from the beginning of this turn towards the end. I've now kind of reapplied a coherent front line. I've taken over the terrain that he's gifted me, and I've definitely moved forward into my plans for the winter. And even in the south here, I'm not that angry with the results. I was able to get back far enough to where I think that I'm not going to get cut off into another like Minsk-style pocket, but I'm not going to pretend that Krasnodar is going to be under my control whenever I get my turn back to me, as I get to what would be December 6th or 7th. Still not 100% sure what his plans are down here. And that does bring me to the one thing from the very beginning of the video, the decision I made that I'm not sure was the right thing to do. So I have a bunch of rifle divisions sitting in the reserves that have a max tow of 0%. And with the 500,000 men, I decided to change that to its 100%, which might have been a little bit ambitious because they might get the infantry that they need. I'm not sure I'm producing enough guns for them at this point in time. So I might regret that, but I'll take a close look on it when I get my turn back. And if I just change it next week, then so be it.